Hello, my name is Chris Robinson, and I'm a senior here at Frisco High School. And this year, I'm studying I'm going to study a wide variety of topics, but they're all going to fall under a general theme of interaction between the natural environment and humans. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, how human settling patterns, how we build houses affects an animal's natural migration patterns or their habitat, and how we can coexist in between one of those through a variety of topics. Hence the title, Environmentally Conscious Life. My quote for this year is from Ecclesiastes. It's meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generation goes, but the earth remains forever. And I chose that quote because at the end it says the earth remains forever, even though people's life, even though generations, it's a short span in terms of the span of the earth's lifetime. And so what we do in our time, really, in the whole grand scheme of things, is kind of inconsequential, because as you can see, their civilizations, that their buildings and their monuments and their great achievements of works have been destroyed over time and have been built up on by previous generations. And really the only thing that we can do as generations that have a lasting difference on the earth is making sure that we don't destroy the natural resources that we have and what we have in the short time that we have as a generation. And from the picture you can see that what humans, as really, we don't really have any natural predators, anything above us. We kind of hold the world in our hand. We kind of hold the world's fate in our hand, and our actions have the most impact out of any living species on the earth, and how the earth is shaped and what happens as far as weather patterns, climates, or etc. So I have interviewed 3 people, and through the first semester I've really focused on environmental impact through architecture and design principles. And my first interview was Travis Cisneros, and he's the design director at Aquaterra Outdoors. And Aquaterra Outdoors, they do outside, like, backyard landscaping and landscape architecture. And from him, he does all the 3D modeling. As a design director, he's not really going through and doing schematic design. He really works on the 3D models and presentations to the client, which is different from Ron Selmarsky, who's the design director at Perkins Willis Dallas. But Ron actually goes through and he does schematic design with the clients. He meets with the clients and he designs what will be presented to the client. So it's the same title but 2 different roles. A third interview was with Dudley Raymond, and he is a landscape architect for the city of Frisco, and he's worked with the city of Frisco for about 15 years. And he doesn't do more design. He works behind the scenes and the contracting and making sure the work gets done properly and bringing work in. And from him, I learned that the most important thing in any venture you do is learning how to sell your ideas and yourself, because if someone doesn't believe in what you're doing and how you're going to do it, and the fact that it can actually make an impact, and they're not going to want to buy into what you're doing. And then my 4th interview was Smit Patel, and he owns his own landscape architecture firm, Smit Patel Design Studios, and he does a wide variety of landscape architecture projects, from municipal projects to parks and home backyards, and he actually did some of the landscaping across 121. And he also said some of the same things from as Mr. Raymond about learning how to sell yourself. And the one thing about Mr. Patel that I liked at any of the interviews that I had is that he was a very down-to-earth person, and he was very people-oriented. Not to say to try to please people, but he knew the importance of making sure that you met people's needs rather than the bottom line. Obviously, you still have to make money, but he knew that it was more important to make sure that the people's needs were met in a way that makes them feel comfortable, in a way to make sure that A, they'll come back for repeat business, and B, to make sure that you establish that personal connection rather than just it being a business relationship and just being about the bottom line. So for my research, for my original work, I was originally going to enter an architecture competition to design apartment living for migrant workers in Southern California, but that competition got delayed quite a bit, and they didn't have a lot of the information for us to design anything. So I kind of scrapped that And then I decided to do research on design principles and design techniques that incorporate things from everyday life like wind and solar power into making our houses less energy dependent and making them more low cost. And so one of the things I researched were wind catchers, and this is actually a concept that's been going on since ancient time. They use them in the pyramids and they use them in the Middle East. And essentially the idea of a wind catcher is it takes air blowing from the outside, and it pushes the cool air in when you have like a temperature differential. It pushes the cool air in, and then once that air settles in and starts to lose its temperature, it'll rise out through the top through openings or through another opening throughout the side of the house. And this, instead of having to use AC, you can use this to cool your house in environments where there is a lot of wind or substantial wind, or you could also use this in corporation intact with AC and have a low breeze of AC run through the house, but it circulates well with the wind catcher, and then it'll keep a continuous flow of air going through your house without having to power the AC so much. And so on the left is a diagram of kind of a basic wind catcher and how they would use it kind of in the Middle East, and then on the right is more of a modern wind catcher in which it has moisturized volume control dampers to make sure that moisture doesn't come in and out. It has ceiling diffusers to diffuse the air, where you have a definitive one side where fresh air is coming in and a definitive other side where the stale air is coming out. And then here's some pictures of actual applications of wind catchers. On the very left is what they use in the Middle East, and on the right is more of a modern interpretation of the wind catcher. And on the right is kind of an Art Deco style back in the 60s, how it has the big flary circles and has all of the organic geometry with the incorporation of the wind catchers in those circles. It has grates spread out to where the wind can flow in. The second main thing that I studied in my research for these homes is straw bale construction. And straw bale construction, instead of using brick and traditional building materials to build your house, you actually take the byproducts of making like cereal products like hay, and then you take that straw and you pack it tightly together in these bales, and then you stack them one on top of each other and then plaster them with lime to create a tight seal, and it creates a very high insulation value, higher than most insulation in brick and mortar. The only con with it is that since it's not really a widespread building concept, there's not a lot of contractors that know how to do it, and so you have to pay premium dollar to have someone that knows how to actually do it. But it's somewhat easy enough if you want to take the time and take the dedication. You could build a very simple one yourself, or even a little bit more complex one. It'll just take some time and patience on your part to make. So you can see here it has a diagram of how it's made. It has the straw bale stacked on top of each other, and at the very bottom it has a foundation to where the straw bale isn't getting moisture in from the ground that makes it start to rot, and then it has a lime plastered on top of it. Straw bale construction started in America, in Nebraska, because they had all the straw left over from the hay that they were making, and they realized that they could use this as a building material to keep them insulated during the cold winters in Nebraska. And once concrete and brick started to become popular materials, this sort of died away. It didn't completely die out, but it sort of died away because the concrete and the brick were cheaper at that point in time for using it, and people weren't really concerned about high energy costs, because at that point they thought there was an abundance of energy that they could use. But now that we're learning that our oil and electricity, oil-powered electricity obviously, but those aren't the most sustainable ways of powering your house. We're going back to these old techniques that they used before we were relying on energy to make our houses less energy dependent and lower cost for us. So combining this with anything I do in the second semester, everything that I do is going back to the mantra of being just taking in consideration the natural environment around us and the earth that's been around us, and being stewards of the world and learning to take care of the world while coexisting with it. One more time, man.
like 8 seconds.